Good morning, everyone. I'm very happy to welcome you all to today's colloquium on transhumanism in Africa, questioning the concept of radical enhancement of humans' moral capacities. I, Amara Esther Chimakonam, a postdoc fellow at the Center for Phenomenology in South Africa, organized this event in collaboration with the Center for Phenomenology in South Africa, University of South Africa, and the Conversational School of Philosophy. I'll be your moderator for today. The aim of this colloquium, is to critically engage with transhumanism and moral enhancement from an African philosophical perspective. And I also want to extend my respect and appreciation to our distinguished speakers who are here to share their expertise and knowledge with us. You are welcome. So this is how our program will proceed. For today, we will be having 4 speakers. And each speaker has between 25 and 30 minutes for their lecture. We will have the 2 lectures and then the Q&A. Then we will take the second and third lectures and then the Q&A. Please, I plead with us to stick to time so that we'll have enough room for discussion, for engagement, for comments, for contributions, for questions, and what have you. And I also plead with us to mute ourselves as we join these events. Please kindly note that the recording of this event will be posted on our YouTube channel for educational purposes. At this point, I would like to express my deep gratitude to my esteemed host, Professor Abraham Olivier, who is the director at the Center for Phenomenology in South Africa, University of Fort Hare, South Africa. Your presence here is an honor, Prof. Thank you for being here, and we eagerly await your 5 minutes opening remarks on behalf of the Center for Phenomenology in South Africa. Prof, please talk to us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Chimakonam. Let me start by thanking you directly for this initiative to organize this event. I commend you for making it a colloquium jointly hosted by the CPSA and the Conversational School of Philosophy. CPSA is, of course, the Center for Phenomenology in South Africa. It pleases me indeed to have Professor Chimakonam also with us from this Conversational School of Philosophy. You really commended Dr. Chimakonam for securing the participation of a great list of presenters and topics. Now, to open this colloquium is truly a phenomenological exercise, if you permit me. Recall one opens something by letting it show itself. And opening also means to start conversation about what shows itself. And here the 2 hosts are put to work together very nicely to have a joint event that brings such a good variety of speakers to the colloquium. As the theme indicates, the question of human enhancement in whatever form starts indeed with questioning in its phenomenological sense of bracketing our attitudes about what it means to be human and how the enhancement may matter, not only in relation to other humans, but also to non-humans. This calls not only for phenomenological bracketing, but also for critical conversation. Now, finally, to open also means I should let the speakers come to the fore and speak themselves instead of sealing the show with a long opening. And that I leave to the presenters in a bit. So let me just close the opening by taking the liberty to remind you of and invite you to take part in the upcoming CPSA conference, beginning of September, on existence and crisis. Dr. Chimakonam is part of the organizing team, and we are looking forward to seeing you at another promising event. Dr. Chimakonam, you have been very busy with a number of organizing such events. I commend you for this, and thank you very much for the honor to open this. All the best. I'm done.
Yeah, thank you very much, Prof. Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to the first talk for today. Due to time, I will share the detailed bio of the speakers on the chat box. What I will do here is to introduce them briefly. So our first speaker for today is Professor Stefan Lorenz. He will be speaking to us on We Have Always Been Cyborgs. This is going to be a very interesting lecture. So Professor Stefan Lorenz is a philosophy professor at John Cabot University in Rome, director and co-founder of the Beyond Humanism Network, fellow at the Institute for Ethics and Emerging Technologies. He has edited more than 10 essay collections and author of the following monographs on transhumanism. Published in 2020, We Have Always Been Cyborgs, published in 2022. Transhumanismus, published in 2023. In addition to this, he is also an editor-in-chief and founding editor of the Journal of Posthuman Studies, which was established in 2017. He has given numerous lectures around the world. Professor Sona, please talk to us. Thank you.
Many thanks for that kind introduction. And for now, giving you the opening presentation at that wonderful event. So the main thought, which has triggered the debates on moral enhancement, was the following. The potential of emerging technologies has increased significantly. And these technologies can be used both for improving the qualities of personal lives as well as for bringing about human extinctions. To reduce the likelihood of these technologies being used for destroying humanity, it needs to be guaranteed that users are moral enough not to use them for such ends. And so, as a consequence of these thoughts, Savulescu and Persson stressed the need to globally render moral bioenhancement obligatory. And this goes along with several challenges. Firstly, such an enterprise cannot be realized politically. Such alterations cannot be brought about. A global government is neither desirable nor realistic. Technologically, such alterations cannot be brought about so far. And it's unclear which concept of morality ought to apply. This doesn't mean that by means of emerging technologies, it's impossible to realize moral modifications in human beings. I'm merely highlighting that the goal has to be an even more modest one. It has been too grand so far in the discussions. In the following reflections, I'm highlighting 3 insights by means of which morally enhanced cyborgs can be realized. Please be aware that these reflections are situated in a version of Euro-transhumanism, which implies that they might not have to apply in other parts of the world. The intellectual grounding of reflections is decisive and needs to be considered in order to prevent problematic types of neocolonial structures. Here, a clear distinction between philosophical issues with a wide appeal, like the relevance of an expanded health span, and more culturally situated reflections need to be made. Philosophical dialogues are helpful for realizing which insights have a wider and which have a more narrow scope. If reflections stimulate constructive interferences, then their relevance might be less based upon a specific cultural situatedness. So I'm looking forward to the reflections and exchanges with you on these issues. We've always been cyborgs. A cyborg is a steered organism such it has developed the capacity of using language. The organic prerequisite for such a modification came about 300,000 years ago due to genetic modification. From then on, it was possible to upgrade specific organisms, which enabled them to communicate by means of language, develop further capacity, and realize specific personal characteristics. The complex interaction between both environmental as well as genetic modification brings about our specific set of traits. And these traits can be changed through environmental influences, education, as well as technological alterations like gene technologies, brain-computer interfaces, and digitalization. The question remains what can be done to promote morality further, both in the sense of promoting moral behavior, as well as in the sense of giving shape to moral character. Different technologies need to be considered for realizing these ends. Even though no pill which makes humans always just is in sight or can even be meaningfully conceptualized, some as good as it gets suggestions can be considered due to us always having been cyborgs. The human personality can be altered through the following two technologies to increase the likelihood of both a moral character to come about as well as the probability of moral behavior. Enhancing cognitive capacities is a promising enterprise for realizing this goal, as there's a correlation between cognitive capacities and respect for others. Educating a human towards posthuman virtues is a second option, as compassion gets promoted by truthfulness, mindfulness, and impulse control. An even more efficient way of promoting moral behavior might be by means of environmental circumstances. Establishing an internet panopticon is probably one of the most efficient ways for promoting moral behavior. By being watched even without being judged afterwards increases the likelihood of acting in accordance with the dominant rules to reduce the likelihood of getting sanctioned. Enhancing cognitive capacities, educating a human towards posthuman virtues, and establishing an intense internet panopticon are three transhumanist measures for enhancing morality. I will now add a few reflections on each of these specific suggestions. Enhancing cognitive capacities. Since the beginning of the 20th century, intelligence tests have been standardized. Flynn noted that from generation to generation, the intelligence score has increased. That is well known as a Flynn effect. In addition, Steven Pinker, in his seminal work, The Better Angels of Our Nature, has shown that violence against individuals has decreased during human history. In case both observations are plausible, it might even be possible to combine both insights such that it follows that there is a correlation between an increase in cognitive capacities and a reduction of direct violence directed against a person. If this is the case, then a moral character and a reduction of violent behavior could be promoted by means of enhancing cognitive capacities. Better cognitive capacity enables us to be more innovative, be better prepared for problem solving, make us realize the implications of our own acts, and increase the likelihood of staying healthy. All these implications are such that there are reasons for holding that the likelihood of an increased quality of life gets realized by improving someone's cognitive capacities. Cognitive capacities can be promoted not only by traditional educative means, but also by means of drugs, brain-computer interfaces, and possibly more radical interventions like the selection of specific genetic traits after in vitro fertilization and pre-implantation genetic diagnosis, not to speak of technologies such as gene modifications or gene printing, which are likely to get realized in a more distant future in a reliable manner. If this is the case, by means of enhancing cognitive capacity, not only the quality of our lives can be improved, but also the likelihood of moral behavior and a morally better character. Of course, it would be wrong to claim that there's a causal connection between cognitive capacities and morality, as many criminals, villains, or mass murderers have been highly intelligent. Many extremely intelligent people were active politicians, inventors, and scientists in the Third Reich. However, given the wider cultural developments as described by Pinker, there are some strong indications for claiming that violence against individuals has decreased significantly. Of course, this doesn't mean that there's a necessary linear development towards less violence in human history. Cognitive capacities also enable us to understand ourselves. It is interesting to note how human capacities have developed in the course of history. At the age of 2 in a human development, about 2/3 of all human beings have the capacity to pass the mirror self-recognition mark test. Newborns do not have this capacity. However, members of several non-human species have managed to pass the mirror test, like dolphins, many great apes, magpies, and others. It seems to be an indication for being able to cognitively separate the self which exists over time from a self which is only aware of the present. Human beings do not just live in the present, but also have a sense of the past and an expectation to continue living in the future. A further significant capacity is that of being able to reflect upon ourselves. Historically, Augustine's Confessions have widely been recognized as being the first literary autobiography. Here, someone not only writes about others, but reflects on his own being in the world. With Dostoevsky, Nietzsche, and Freud, the development towards more hidden psychological traits continues. Non-obvious desires get revealed, which might have not been recognized before the coming about of the psychoanalytic paradigm shift. These three steps reveal a significant change concerning the cognitive capacities which clearly have taken place. Firstly, passing the mirror test. Secondly, conceiving an autobiography. Thirdly, revealing hidden motivations. These developments enable us to separate ourselves more and more clearly from others and grasp the psychological processes which take place in their minds too. At the same time, equality, democracies, and liberalism have gained in importance during the Enlightenment, which goes along with the reduction of violence against individuals. The data from the website Our World in Data clearly reveal that at the beginning of this millennium, for the first time ever, there have been more democracies and authoritarian political systems in the world. Of course, there is no necessary development towards a morally better world, as Kant or Hegel have hinted at in some of their writings. However, there's some indication for claiming that by enhancing cognitive capacity, it's also possible to increase the likelihood of moral behavior. My second point, educating a human towards posthuman virtues. The issue of virtues is even more complicated. Traditionally, virtue has been a stable character trait which increases the likelihood of living a good life for the one who has it. Virtues were universally valid as one specific human nature was assumed. In order to develop a virtue, a community was needed so that a basic stable attitude can come about, as it's necessary to permanently being reminded of acting virtuously in order to form a habit so that a virtue can be established in someone's character. All the central philosophical premises necessary for being able to affirm virtues have been challenged, in particular also not only by naturalism, Darwin, also by transhumanism. So how can it be possible to talk about posthuman virtues nevertheless, or virtues in general? In addition, I've often argued in favor of the position of a radical plurality of concepts of the good, due to each one of those being constituted by an idiosyncratic bundle of effects without there being one element which necessarily goes along with an increased quality of life for all people. Most people, however, agree that an increased health span is important for an increased quality of life. Thereby, the increased health span can be both of instrumental as well as of intrinsic value. Given the radical plurality of concepts of the good, how then can it make sense to affirm some virtues? It has to do with the political arrangement needed for realizing the greatest possible diversity of personal flourishing. An ethics of autonomy within a liberal political context is needed to avoid paternalistic structures such that persons can live in accordance with their own demands of living a good life. Please note, I'm not defending a libertarian or neoliberal societies, any type of political system which solely focuses on freedom. Freedom undermines itself. Certain material prerequisites are needed for appropriately being able to embrace an ethics of autonomy, like health, housing, and education. Here, the relevance of virtues comes in. An ethics of autonomy demands the possibility to make authentic autonomous decisions. And this type of authenticity needs some training, preparation, and engagement. Please also note that when I talk about authenticity, I do not have a core metaphysical self in mind, but rather some core drives which represent the central constituents of someone's character. They are not immaterial, unchanging, or existent in a separate self. However, it's relevant to consider them for living a fulfilled life. Nevertheless, it can be difficult to grasp what they are. It's so easy to being influenced by social media images whereby artificial drives get added to or overshadow the core drives which make up someone's personality. Thereby, it can become difficult to distinguish between a longing which is central to one's own well-being and another drive which has become a part of one's personality due to clever marketing. To make a proper autonomous decision, it becomes necessary to distinguish between core and fake drives. Here, the virtues become relevant, as it's a massive challenge for anyone to be able to consciously crystallize one's core drives. Truthfulness is a central virtue which allows the person to realize, accept, and allow being confronted with one's core drives. It can be challenging to confront these effects. Some can be disturbing, extreme, awkward, and more. Truthfully confronting one's own drives and allowing oneself to being in contact with them can be an enormously challenging endeavor. However, by doing so, you manage to realize what is in your interest when you need to make a complex decision. It's far too easy to being influenced by the common opinion, by social media marketing. Truthfulness, which demands a lot of solitude, enables a person to grasp what is in someone's interest. To be able to realize one's longings, wishes, and desires, it's important to be aware of the entanglement of one's own becoming in one's surrounding, as otherwise the implications of one's own acts, decisions, and plans remains unclear. It is important to be mindful of the relatedness of processes, events, and twists, as otherwise an act can strongly backfire upon oneself. To understand the importance of what one eats, where one lives, or which type of climate promotes someone's well-being is central for improving the likelihood of living a good life. Health, a solar mood, and a joyful attunement might be much more relevant for living a good life than an intense engagement with complex metaphysical worries. Mindfulness meditations enable a person to be aware of the complex becoming of one's own entanglement. And these can be promoted both by bodily endeavors as well as by pharmaceutical means. And James Hughes has presented some wonderful reflections on artificially enhancing mindfulness. After knowing one's core drives and having been made aware of one's own embeddedness in the world, one needs to take a decision for realizing one's drives. However, it's so easy to being thoughtless and do something while knowing that it undermines one's own needs. One's own needs should be realized, acknowledged, and cherished so that a high quality of life can be experienced. However, it can nevertheless be difficult to live in accordance with one's needs, as many of one's own acts occur out of carelessness, without any reflection, and out of laziness. And this leads us to the third virtue which is needed for living an ethics of autonomy, namely the virtue of impulse control. You realize your core drives, become aware of how you can live in accordance with it best, and grasp the need to be in control of your impulses so that you hold on to your core impulses rather than on a random longing which has been triggered by social media. By progressing thus, not only the likelihood of living a good life gets increased, but at the same time, one's entire embeddedness in the world of continuous becoming. These virtues make one realize a new humility, different from the arrogance of a dualistic past, which saw us infinitely superior to chimpanzees. Such a revised self-understanding makes us realize the suffering of all the self-conscious animals around us. We are like them in so many different respects. Many of them also pass the mirror self-recognition test. Realizing these similarities often leads to an altered behavior. Hearing the screams of suffering animals in a slaughterhouse makes many people turn towards vegetarianism, at least for a few days. Hence, educating a human with the posthuman virtues of truthfulness, mindfulness, and self-control not only increases the likelihood of someone having a higher quality of life, but also increases the likelihood of that person having a more compassionate character and acting in a moral manner. At the same time, it needs to be acknowledged that these virtues do not guarantee these moral implications. However, given the above reflections, I provided some reasons why they increase the likelihood of bringing about a more compassionate character who decides to act morally more often. My third point is establishing an internet panopticon. In contrast to the former technologies, which merely increase the likelihood of morality, establishing an internet panopticon, a system of permanent surveillance, a system where all the digital data traces get collected, is probably one of the most efficient ways of promoting moral behavior. Establishing an internet panopticon has several significant advantages. It might even be practically necessary to realize such structures given the way digital data are being used in the US, and even more thorough in China. The relevance of collecting digital data can hardly be overestimated, as digital data are the new oil. Even though oil is an actual substance, while digital data are an intellectual property. Still, realizing correlations between digital data and health, politics, innovation is fundamental for any current enterprise. It's not a big surprise that China has overtaken the USA already when it comes to the quantity of peer-reviewed publications. Given the way digital data are being used in China, it's hard to imagine how anyone can stop China from becoming the economically leading actor in the near future. However, getting hold of digital information is not only relevant for economic flourishing, it also has significant implications for promoting socially desirable behavior. Being watched even without being judged afterwards increases the likelihood of acting in accordance with the dominant rules to reduce the likelihood of getting sanctions. This was the initial logic for Jeremy Bentham to design the panopticon, because he initially developed it in order to run a prison more cost efficiently. Even without a guard being in the central tower of the panopticon, chances would be high that the prisoners would stick to the rules of the prison, as they would not know when the guard is inside the tower. Similar effects can be found in China, where the Chinese social credit system is active. The crime rates there are low. If you're aware that whatever you do can be traced and used against you, people usually think twice before acting and often self-censor themselves before committing a crime. At the same time, it might cause an enormous amount of stress if you're aware that whatever you do could be used against you. Still, if most of the times nothing happens, you might worry less about this issue and might not always be conscious of being watched. Still, in the case of serious circumstances, it's possible to trace an offender. If the offender was a rapist, a murderer, or committed another violent crime, it would be in the interest of most people if it's easily possible to trace the offender and put him into prison. The central issue is that an internet panopticon could easily be used to enforce any kind of behavior. The more rigid, strong, and detailed the concept of the good is, which a government subscribes to, the flourishing of a great plurality of lifestyles cannot be guaranteed. And that is why many people are so concerned about permanent surveillance. Whoever does not subscribe to the concept of the good, officially affirmed, can be forced to live in accordance with it. However, would an internet panopticon still be problematic if a person gets sanctioned only when they have directly harmed another person or committed a serious crime? So basically not to combine it with a rigid authoritarian political concept of the good, but with an extremely liberal one. Would it then still be problematic? In this case, the internet panopticon could be used to find correlations between digital information and insight in the health sciences, politics, or engineering, and everyone would be aware that the chances of getting caught would be extremely high if they directly harmed another person. Given such cultural circumstances, it might even be possible to realize a freer constitution than ever before. In the case of some serious crimes, however, the likelihood of getting caught would be high, if not certain. Citizens of such a country would integrate the rules into their personality such that a moral character and moral behavior could be promoted. And consequently, the most efficient means of promoting moral character, moral behavior, might be by means of establishing an internet panopticon. Given that such structures go along with the rule system focused on freedom, it might be an open question whether such a political system could still be seen as morally problematic. It might even be a political necessity. I'm coming to my concluding remarks. To increase the likelihood of both moral character as well as moral behavior, enhancing cognitive capacities is a promising enterprise, as there seems to be a correlation between cognitive capacities and respect for others. Educating a human towards posthuman virtues is a second option for realizing these goals, as compassion gets promoted by truthfulness, mindfulness, and impulse control. An even more efficient way of promoting moral behavior might be by means of establishing an internet panopticon. Would such a system be as hellish as most ethicists fear? I've been trying to show that it might promote both economic well-being as well as security, while it doesn't have to impact upon freedom if legal sanctions only occurred when another person was directly harmed. I'm very much looking forward to a posthuman future to occur. Many thanks for your attention, and I'm looking forward to the further exchanges with you.
Thank you very much, Prof. This is a very thought-provoking lecture. Thank you. So before we take a Q&A for this lecture, I would love to call the next speaker.